Fellow Ghanaians, a very good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us here on UpFront on the Joy News channel. Well, it's the 15th day of November 2023. What it means is that today, the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has presented the 2024 budget. Now, that's important for a few reasons. This is the last budget by the Akufo-Addo government. Whatever happens by end of year 2024, we will have a new government. This is also the first budget since Ghana's approval, since the approval of Ghana's IMF program. And so you wouldn't be far from wrong to conclude that this is probably Ghana's first budget following the approval of its IMF program. Of course, some have argued that technically speaking, the 2023 budget was more of an IMF budget. But what's in the 2024 budget? What does it mean for Ghanaians? The critical question would be, were your expectations met? We'll be asking some players in industry because for many of them, they had been advocating a reduction in taxes. What they wanted the finance minister to do was to reduce some of these taxes or maybe scrap them because, in their words, it was hurting their business and they could no longer transfer all of these to the Ghanaian consumer. And so, with no option, they may be forced, could be forced into laying off the employees. Well, the budget has been presented. We're looking at a total expenditure of 226 billion, with total revenue and grants amounting to 176 billion. That's a 50 billion deficit. Well, you know how we are going to fund that. We are looking at a growth target of some 2.8% at least, and we're told by end of year 2024, the Ghanaian economy will hit some 1 trillion by way of GDP. But if you are expecting some tax cuts or tax reliefs, well, these are the reliefs that the finance minister talks about. Very soon you will hear from him, but he says extend the zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. Waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. And waive import duties on semi-knockdown and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years. And extend zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years, and zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary parts, and grant import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary parts, and grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery equipment and inputs and medical consumables, raw materials for pharmaceutical industry, and a VAT flat rate of 5%. But of importance also is the fact that the minister says the Stamp Duty Act 2005, Act 689, has not been reviewed since its enactment in 2005, and to realign the rate with current economic realities, government in 2024 will review the rates and fees for stamp duties, and the bands subject to ad valorem tax will be expanded while specific rates will be reviewed upwards. What do these mean for you and me? What do they mean for businesses? The finance minister says this budget is the Nkunim budget. Where is it leading us to? What victory will this budget give us? My name is Winston Amwa, and when we return after these messages, we'll bring you excerpts of the things the finance minister said, and then I will introduce my guest, and we'll begin the conversations right here. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us on UpFront on the Joy News channel. And this evening, we're joined by Michael Boateng, who's tax partner at KPMG, and John Awuni, who is the chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana. They're both joining us via Zoom. John and Michael, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Weston. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. Before I get your thoughts, let's just listen to what the finance minister said, particularly when it comes to the tax reliefs and the Ghana cedi. Let's just watch these.
Cedi has stabilized against the US dollar since early 2023. With a year-to-date, Mr. Speaker, a year-to-date cumulative depreciation of 25% compared to 54% in 2022. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, the cedi has only depreciated by 6.4% on cumulative basis since February 2023, compared to, Mr. Speaker, 53.9% over the same period in 2022. The stability of the cedi largely reflects the positive impact from the restoration of economic activity, including robust economic growth, improvement in the current account position, improvement in forex liquidity following the IMF ECF inflows, Bank of Ghana's domestic gold purchase program, reduced speculative forex demand as market confidence rebounds. Mr. Speaker, tax reliefs. Our approach to tax policy since 2017 was to give significant relief to the private sector until expenditure pressures from 2020 required a more aggressive approach. It is important to note that in the short term, fiscal sustainability requires that we improve our tax ratios significantly, otherwise our long-term competitiveness will be eroded. As we all know, our country's 13% tax to GDP ratio is far below our peers. Our target is 18 to 20%, and we are on course for 16%, hoping to be achieved this year. In that regard, it is difficult to implement all the structural reforms and tax reliefs needed to immediately lower and/or eliminate certain tax handles. However, I assure this august House that we have heard, we believe in lower taxes as a government for industry, and we are working others aggressively with the GRA and to be cemented with the Standing Committee of the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue. Mr. Speaker, further to the above, the following reliefs have been prioritized for implementation. To extend, Mr. Speaker, the zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to extend zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery equipment and inputs and medical consumables, raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Speaker, a VAT flat rate of 5% to replace the 15% standard VAT rate on all commercial properties will be introduced to simplify administration. To address the negative externalities of plastic waste and pollution, government will review and expand the environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging and industrial and vehicle emissions. Mr. Speaker, the Stamp Duty Act 2005, Act 689, has not been reviewed since an enactment in 2005. To realign the rate with current economic realities, government in 2024 will review the rates and fees for stamp duties. The bands subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded, while the specific rates will be reviewed. Mr. Speaker, a simplified tax return will be introduced as a means of promoting voluntary compliance as part of the modified taxation scheme for individuals in the informal sector. This approach will make it easier for taxpayers to fulfill their tax obligations to the state.
So that's the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, announcing some tax reliefs. How significant are these reliefs, and what will be the impact of these 8 reliefs on us, as in you and me? Let's start a conversation with you, Michael, because of your expertise in tax. Now I'm sure by now you've read and you've also heard the Finance Minister talking about these 8 tax reliefs. This is what I want us to do. Let's start with the 8 before we get to the stamp duty and everything. But let's look at the 8 and find out what the impact of these 8 would be on businesses and, by extension, consumers, us.
Thank you, Winston. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're very audible.
Okay, good. So I think if we take a step back and look at the impact, I think when I say the impact, looking at the key 8 items that you raised, you could see it's very targeted, and you could see that it's targeting towards industry. You're looking at those in the agri manufacturing, agri sector, especially looking at those coming with the inputs. The whole idea is that you want to reduce the impact of cost of doing business on them, and I think that's where the issue of the waiver of those taxes, when it comes to the import of raw materials on agri inputs and others. Then you're also looking at those in the local manufacturing industry, focusing mostly on the textile industry, and I think this is an extension, giving extension for 2 years. For locally textile, when you're manufactured in Ghana. And I think if you take a backdrop of, these policies or these initiatives, I think the impact is basically to drive, the local businesses, and also actually to make sure that the whole issue of industrialization from that aspect is also considered. Then we were looking at those importation of sanitary pads, and also those who are going to import raw materials for manufacturing. I think this is one significant, policy that, if it's really implemented, will definitely have a social impact on our society. We know our sisters and our mothers. This is something that has been there, and looking at where Ghana is going, you're looking at how the impact of the SDG goals and all those things. I think this is very, very critical. And also its economic impact. Then we're looking at those, talking about the electric vehicles. I think this is one new thing which has come up. It's quite interesting that whenever we come up with all these policies, businesses or the investor community is not actually, we don't quantify some of these benefits or the financial impact in terms of the injection in their business. So I think these are some of the things which, come up. And I think, as you've seen, this is budget. We are expecting to see that when we are rolling it out and it's being budget debated, all these things basically is expected to actually, promote certain sectors of the economy in terms of driving businesses, in terms of making sure society benefits from others. So I think these are the key general things that I would say from the key 8, initiatives that you mentioned.
So let's take some of them. Waive import duties on the import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. Electric vehicles. Michael Boateng, how many of us import electric vehicles into this country? So
yes.
So what's going to be the impact of a waiver of import duties on something that hardly gets into the country?
Winston, you're absolutely right. And I think if you take a step back and look at it, there are 2 important things that I think that we should look at, maybe which we shouldn't miss in this whole conversation. What type of cars are we looking at? We are looking at cars whose impact on environment definitely is going to be positive. We all know the impact of climate change. You see how our rain pattern, is changing. So maybe, and I'm just looking at it from a policy point of view, that possibly the impact of these electric cars has to be encouraged to make sure that it's actually in terms of this impact on the economy, in terms of the environment, all those things are considered. So I think those are things that we are looking at. Then you are right. How many of us will import these cars? But then the question is that if it's extended for 8 years, maybe the idea is that maybe it's going to help, drive that line of, environment friendly, decision making. So maybe that is where, it's coming from. But I think from a policy and even from a country perspective, if we can move into that line, I think we all know the impact of the environment, the climate change and all those things in our business. I think these are some of the things that we may have to look at and make sure that the more discussions and more, feedback is taken to make sure these things are successful. I think that is so key when we are coming up with such policies.
Yes, I mean, so this is more, I mean, as you say, this is to promote, the protection of the environment through the usage of electric vehicles, the charging ports and everything in the country. The evidence on the ground doesn't suggest we're ready yet, but of course, this is part of the process in getting us ready. And so, I mean, you're looking at the impact and you say, currently a bit minimal, going forward, maybe we can have a major impact of that. But you're also looking at one issue that has been talked about frequently, and I'll bring in John Awuni shortly, because you're looking at, for instance, import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary pads. I thought the conversation was, removal of duties totally on these, because also we're importing not just the import duties, but the removal for raw materials, but even on finished products. So how's this going to deal with the challenges that we've had in this country when it comes to, for instance, something like sanitary pads that has become a major challenge for us?
And Wilson, your guess is as good as mine. Whenever sometimes you are promoting some of this, the question then becomes, look at supply and look at demand. And I don't have all the answers, but I wouldn't be surprised that maybe you need to, if you decide to just make it only limited to only locally manufactured, maybe the suppliers may not meet the demand. I don't have the answer to that, but maybe these are all discussions that you looked at, because you don't want to also come up with policies that disadvantage those who are manufacturing, locally, because you need these industries to promote more or less direct jobs and others. So these are all discussions that need to be looked at, but it's a possibility that there's a demand and supply in terms of time frame. If you decide to do this, do we have enough supply from the local industry to do that? These are all discussions and clarity that needs to be made. But at the end of the day, I think you take a step back and look at the rationale behind the social benefits, and then also we may have the economic issue that we may also look at in terms of taxes and waivers and others. But I think these discussions, when we are having them, I think this is where we expect more clarity and those things to come up with. And I believe these are some of the things which definitely will come up when the debate and others will be looked at. But you're absolutely right. We want to disadvantage locally manufactured companies. That these are the backbone of the country.
Let me bring in John Awuni. Please hold on, Michael. Let me bring in John Awuni at this point, because he is the chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, and they've had lots of issues. I mean, they issued press statements urging the government to reduce taxes, and talked about how, for instance, these taxes were impacting them. John, I'm sure you listened to the finance minister. You may have read the budget. Your expectations, were they met?
Absolutely not. We were expecting the finance minister to come up with policies that will have effect immediately on the price of kenke, on the price of wachi, on electricity, on the price of water, on the price of fruit juices. And we did not see anything like that. So as it is, if Parliament passes the budget, come 1st January, the price of kenkey will still be higher. The price of wachi will still be higher. The point I'm making is that the common man on the street is not going to feel any effect of this budget, even though the finance minister said he has provided reliefs for sanitary pads, a relief for electric vehicles, relief for some raw materials imports of some of these sanitary pads or what be imported. I think that the common man is not going to feel it. I, as a wholesale consumer, will not feel it. So, as it is, the status quo remain. Nothing. It's as if the budget was not read. COVID-19 is still in place. COVID-19 levy is still in place. The special import levy is still in place. Electricity tariffs are still going to be increased every quarter. Water tariffs will still go up. Rents will go up. We still will have growth and sustainability tax is still in place that will charge charge tax on profit of businesses before the actual tax. That the expanded exercise tax on fruit juices, alcohol, and all that will still be on, so people will not even be able to enjoy the Christmas. There's a whole lot and a variety of things that are still in place that the common man on the street is not going to feel any effect of this budget come 1st January 2024. The common man is also not going to have any hope that in the future things are going to be better. In the budget, there was no worry of the finance minister about the exchange rate, particularly the rate of the cedi to the dollar. As it stands now, it's 12 cedis. It appears that we are very comfortable with the fact that the cedi is trading at 12 cedis to $1. But where did we come from? We came from 3 cedis to $1, 4 cedis to $1. As of 2020, we had about 5.9 cedis on the average to $1. Today, it is 12 cedis. That impacts on the life of the common man on the street. It impacts on the wages or the salaries of the common man. As it is now, if 1st January, the exchange rate slides, and then it goes to like 14, 15, it will impact on the prices of the goods in the market. So as it is now, nothing has changed, and it's a great worry because I think that the finance minister should have engineered his budget in such a manner that it will have immediate impact on the common man, the grassroots, as they call the political term, the grassroots man. It would have had effect on the people at the grassroots, that they will have hope that if at all the kenkey price will not go up, it will remain the same. But as it is now, the price of kenkey may go up come January. The price of rice will go up. The price of chicken will go up, whether it is local chicken or imported chicken. This will still remain up. The activity at the Ghana ports will still remain same, and people will continue now to divert goods to Cote d'Ivoire. They will divert goods to businesses to Togo. They will divert.
Hold on, John. When you say people will continue, are you suggesting that that's what you do?
That is exactly what is happening. The Bank of Ghana report recently indicated that there was a reduction in imports by 14%, even though our data showed that it was more than 14%. The reduction in imports by 14% did not reflect in the market, whereby you will have a shortage of goods in the market. You still have a lot of rice in the market, you have a lot of chicken in the market, you had a lot of fast-moving commodities in the market. Yet what you saw in the market was that French label products were in the market. They go contrary to our labeling requirements. How did those goods come through the port? They didn't come through the port. They came through unapproved routes from Lubu, through Kojobodo, came through Togo, and all that. They came in through these unapproved routes, and they are in our market. So what it means is that some businesses have opened satellite offices in these countries, and they pass their goods into these countries, and then their clients from Ghana come to these countries, such as Cote d'Ivoire or Togo, buy and now use their goods and come through unapproved routes into the market so that they can sell. So that has a serious effect on the government. A story was told, and I believe that Joy FM was at the recent the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue. And one of the key speakers, the GIPC, Chief Executive, indicated how chief executives who had filled the business class in the flight in which he was also in, and then the first class, all of them said they were going to Cote d'Ivoire because Ghana was no more conducive for business. I didn't say that. This was a testimony that was shared at the Growth and Sustainability, was shared at the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue. So clearly, businesses have diverted. And I've been speaking with a lot of the CEOs and all that. They said, look, we are looking at Cote d'Ivoire, we are looking at Togo, we are looking at Burkina Faso, and we have given feedback to the finance minister. And I thought this budget would have come up in a manner that will ensure that Ghana still becomes a gateway to the sub-region. Ghana still remains as a golden place for business. But as it is now, the cost of doing business will remain high and will go higher and higher. People's stocks remain locked up in warehouses because demand is very, 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 very low. And it is quite unfortunate, even though I recognize the fact that the finance minister has a great difficulty to reduce some of these taxes. But I think that his economics and my economics, particularly development economists, generally agree that tax cuts do have serious benefits on the rate of revenue mobilization for a government. Whether it is corporate tax, income tax, or consumer tax, it has positive effects. And so at our current rate of taxation, I think that it is not good yielding benefit to the government.
Okay. I mean, I'll get back to you on the stamp duty bit, but let me just bring in Michael Boateng, because you make that point also that, look, you have a lot of duties, and this can only increase your cost of doing business. And many businesses will then begin to move outside the country. What it means is that would also be denied the required revenue that we'll be getting from these businesses. Now, Michael, I mean, John has made the point that with these taxes, we're still going to struggle. Would you agree that the current tax regime is a disincentive to businesses?
Thank you, Winston. I think this, before I answer the question, KPMG recently launched, our annual pre-budget survey. And one of the key things that came up, when it comes to fiscal policies, was the impact of some of the taxes on their businesses. They talked about the COVID-19 levy. They also talked about the growth and sustainability. They also talked about certain petroleum taxes and others, which invariably was affecting the sustainability of their business or making their business not profitable. So these sentiments have been expressed from diverse businesses, and then this is something that we when the budget is being read, you expect to see some of these being addressed. However, the key point, it's quite interesting that even the budget, there's issue about, the challenges in terms of VAT collection. You see that, the issue of VAT, the expectation of the budget, not being able to collect as much VAT, has come up. And I think these are all things that need to be looked at. And as I'm saying, our pre-budget survey, the results clearly indicated that the impact of some of the taxes on the businesses. It talked about the inflation, talked about the interest, and others. The devaluation of the cedi depreciation, against the major currencies. Granted, after going through the first the IMF program, you could see that now things are getting better. But I think this fast are still there and they haven't gone away. And I think these are discussions that the managers of the economy need to look at, because these are coming from key business people who have actually, shared these sentiments. And I think John has also, alluded to that fact. So I think that fact, it doesn't go away, but that we need to, address the impact of the taxes on businesses.
So you agree that that's a bit of a disincentive to businesses currently?
To some degree,
Clearly.
businesses have actually raised that point. But then I think the question that we also want to look at is, we were trying to look at that we want to have a very sustainable tax to GDP ratio that, all governments have been talking about, that our rate is a little below within what they call a sub-region, and they want to increase it. The question is that, how do you effectively increase it? And it's quite interesting that now property taxes is actually being rolled out to make sure that, the gap is bridged. They also talk about the fact that, we are going to see a simplified tax returns to make it easier for individuals to file their tax returns. So you could see that various, solutions have been rolled out to make sure that at least get there. But I think the issue is that it still doesn't, hide the fact that, the current, tax regime, especially from the VAT and others, has been, a challenge to businesses.
Okay, so let me bring John Awuni in, and one other point that the minister makes, you say the reliefs are not okay, but he is also talking about the Stamp Duty Act, and so that says the tax has not been reviewed since 2005, and to realign the rate with current economic realities, government in 2024 will review the rates and fees for stamp duties, and the band subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded, while the specific rates will be reviewed upwards. What's your take on that?
So clearly, as I said, yes, if it goes up, the government will get some money, but it still goes to exacerbate the problem of the Ghanaian now. As we are now, the economy is in crisis, and if the economy in crisis means that individuals who make up the economy, you and I, are in crisis. We don't have money, and because we don't have money, that's how come the country does not have money, and they have to go and borrow. And so, if you go further to say that you want to increase one tax or the other and all that, it appears that you don't recognize the fact that people are suffering. You don't really believe that the complaints of the masses, the complaints of those food soldiers is true. But that is the reality, because we are businesses and we are happy when our government is doing well, and all that we can do. We are never politicians and are never interested in politics. The issue is that we want to give feedback to the managers of the economy, and that is what we do. As it is now, immediately the budget was read, I spoke with some key CEOs, and their expression is that they were kind of quite disappointed, and they use the term that the opposition party used, that kind of an empty budget, and it's quite unfortunate. We know that we have difficult, but I think that they could have done much more better work. They have tried by some of the release, but they could have done much work that can have immediate impact on the common man on the street. Immediate impact, at least for the prices of goods not to go up, because they are looking at the issue that inflation, they will reduce inflation to a certain percentage by a close of year, and by 2020 and in 2024, it will go down to perhaps a single digit 8 plus or minus 2. But that is not the issue. Is that the inflation is not excess money chasing fewer goods. These are accumulated prices. Inflation that is driven by the government. Inflation driven by cumulative taxes. Inflation driven by high cost of doing businesses. And the business are just offloading this to the ordinary man on the street. So clearly, the engineers of the budget, the modelers of the budget, should have modeled it in a manner that will presuppose that they recognize the concerns of the consumer, the concerns of the businessman. But it doesn't look so, because as it is, if you go to talk about electric vehicles, the question, how many people bring in electric vehicles? Even if you give me electric vehicle free, as it is now, I will not be comfortable to bring it in, because I'm not even sure that we have people who can repair it in this country. So it is something that is just still in the discussion and all that. So you don't go ahead to kind of say that you have provided relief as if you were having millions of electric vehicles coming into the country. No, as it is now, the ordinary man, a young man that kind of wants to change his standard of living a little by importing a car, or if the uncle gives him a car from the US, that young man cannot clear the car at the port. That is a fact. Because if the car costs like 40,000 USD or 30,000 USD, when you get to the Ghana port, you pay almost about the same value for that car. And so you may not be able to clear that car. So there are many young men that will not be able to clear, increase their standards of living. There are many young men, as it is now, that cannot even buy. When we were growing up, we used to get like used air conditions, used used freezers, used fans. All these ones, they have increased taxes and all kind of things on these things. So you cannot be import these things as a young man or buy these things as a young man to start life. So I was looking at a budget clearly that will reflect the aspiration and the needs of the people. A budget, in fact, a budget that will deal with the level of struggling of the business sector. And clearly that budget...
Yeah, but John Awini, how were you expecting the budget to do these in the times that we find ourselves under an IMF program that is largely based on revenue mobilization?
Listen, I went and bought some goods at a plumbing shop. And that plumbing shop, I bought it almost like 10,000 cedis. I was given an ordinary receipt. At another time, I went and bought 5,000 cedis. I was given an ordinary receipt. There are too many of these things all over the country. And it is so easy for send people out there, let them go out to this informal sector. But you don't fear, don't behave as if you fear to roll the informal sector.
John, talking about ordinary receipt, didn't you ask for a VAT?
They don't have a VAT receipt.
They don't have it.
They don't have VAT receipt. They don't have it. And it's 1,001 because I would be happy to have that VAT receipt and I will insist. But if you insist, that means that you won't buy the thing. And you go to another place, you won't buy. You go and buy paint, a bucket of paint, that will cost 600 cedis. They will not give you a VAT receipt. They don't even have the VAT receipt. You go and do maybe, so those who go and do private solar and whatever not, you do solar that will cost like 100,000 cedis and tell them that, well, let me do withholding tax or let me do this. They don't have it. So those people out there are too many that the government can still meet their revenue target by bringing these people in, by pointing out in the budget that we will do ABCD to ensure that these people are brought into the tax net. But it appears that you are afraid to bring the people in the outside the tax net, or you are afraid to bring people in the informal sector into the tax bracket. So you are just hammering on those people who have modernized their shops. So to say, if you are operating as a barber on a table, nobody will worry you. But if you go and rent a shop and then open, they will now come in a whole lot to harass you for taxes and all that. And insist. So I think that there's a lot more to do. I'm very much aware that we need more roads. We need more water. We need good roads. We need good water. We need hospitals and all the like. And this can only come from the tax that we pay to the government. And we all must pay the taxes. Because as we continue to compare ourselves to the US, compare ourselves to the developed countries, and then there's the Asians and all those developed countries, they all didn't come just by conjuring money or whatever. They developed through focus, they developed through good leadership, they developed through the payment of taxes. And I think that the payment of taxes is very, very important. But you cannot continue to do that on just a very few people. Particularly, your private sector is the engine of growth. Okay. And look at the number of universities in the country and the number of people that they turn out as graduates and the level of unemployment. Let me advertise for a single job. And you see the number of people that will come out looking for those jobs. The level of unemployment is at a very serious, threatening level in this country, and we must take it seriously. And so I am quite disappointed that the private sector, we are still looking at revenue mobilization. Revenue mobilization. You are mobilizing the revenue for who and who to benefit. It is the ordinary person. And when you mobilize it in the long run, that you are trying to build an electric vehicle, what in 8 years. 8 years, where will Honorable Kenufodata be? If 8 years, you may not be in power. That will be another government. So if another government comes and says that they don't even believe in that and cancels it, So you cannot even do your budget and say that by 2026, 2028, where are you going to be in the 2028? During my A-levels, my A-level economists, I used to tell my economists, A-levels economists teacher that when you say consequence in the long run, what about if we are all dead in the long run? So please, what we are looking at is a budget.
All of us will not die. John Awuni, all of us will not die at the same time. All of us will not die at the same time.
All of us will die, but
okay.
Some will go first.
All of us will die. Is that?
All of us will not die at the same time.
No. But I'm not saying all of us will die at the same time. But there are issues that's just on the lighter side. I say that in the long run. So when you keep on like somebody's hungry now, instead I want you to starve, so that in the long run you can ABC, you can survive. And in the long run, if the fellow is dead, what benefit is your savings for the person in the short run? So that is the economic term that I'm saying. I do recognize that things must be built, and we all came from somewhere. But the immediate thing is that people are suffering. The immediate thing is that businesses are struggling. The immediate thing is that families are breaking. The immediate thing is that people, rice, which has become a staple, has become a luxurious product in the country. Chicken, which is a necessity for our protein needs, has become a luxurious product. Local chicken of 1.2 kilos costs about 130 cedis. How many of us can afford that on our tables every day? No, we cannot. So these are things that we should begin to look at to address these things that will reflect the immediate impact of the ordinary man. Go to the market tomorrow and find out from the market, from the best people on by the street, those who buy wachi, those who buy kenki, those who buy face the wall. Find out whether the budget has met their aspirations, and you will hear them tell you no.
Michael, look, and this evening we're having a conversation about the 2024 budget. We're talking to John Awuni, who is chairman of the Food and Beverage Association of Ghana. We also have Michael Boateng, who is a tax partner at KPMG. But Michael, John raises the point, the most important point. He cites himself as an example. The fact that today we have consistently talked about widening the tax net. We have consistently talked about enforcement and compliance. But it seems that's something we never do and look towards, increasing existing taxes or introducing new taxes. Shouldn't we be focusing more on compliance and enforcement instead of consistently engaging in, the increasing of existing taxes or introducing new ones?
Thank you, Winston. And I think, thank you, Winston. I think let me address this by first, discussing some of the issues that John raised. Now, if you take a step back, if you look at the budget, one of the key things that has been raised in the budget was the expansion of the use of the EVAT. And I think this is something that, John is going to address a lot of the issues in terms of making sure that everybody who is supposed to provide services or produce goods which are supposed to issue the VAT invoice, as long as they are going to be on the GRA platform by the use of the EVAT, that means that there will be no opportunity for people to say that I'm not going to issue you a VAT invoice because it should have been captured or monitored by the GRA. So I think if you look at the budget, last year, certain businesses were piloted. This year, the idea is to expand it more so that we have more businesses who are now going to be issuing VAT. They don't even need, they will have to be on GRA platform. And a lot of the issues, leakages that John is talking about, definitely will come up with. And I think, Winston, that's very, very important because one of the interesting things when it comes to VAT, and I think this always gets lost in conversation, VAT is being borne by you and I when you consume services and goods which are supposed to be taxed. Now, what we see is that there's a possibility that when we pay for this consumption of these goods and services, we pay the VAT. The only assurance that we have as taxpayers when we pay this VAT is the VAT invoice that somebody can verify that Michael or Winston came to consume this, they paid you this tax, and did you report it to the government? So whenever we have discussions on VAT, we shouldn't focus so much on the businesses, but we should know that they are just collecting the VAT on our behalf. And I think one of the issues that the VAT is supposed to address is to make sure that when you and I pay for the use or the consumption of these goods, and when we pay that, the GRA can monitor and then collect the tax that we are paying.
Yes, but Michael, I think the point from John is that, so if many of these businesses were charging VAT, what you would have is that for them, they wouldn't have to go through the excise duty that they're paying all the time, the growth and sustainability tax that they're paying, because then you would have enough revenue, you'd have enough funds, because these entities, will be charging. And in this case, all of us would have agreed that we have to pay VAT. That's something, all of us are paying today. But if you, as a business, people are not charging VAT, then government is looking elsewhere. And in this case, it gets to fall on businesses, right?
You're absolutely right. But then you are right. You are right, Winston. But the issue that we all miss when it comes to these things, the issue that we miss is the role of businesses. The law is very clear that you, the provider, the service provider, or the seller of the goods, it is your responsibility to charge the VAT. And from our experience, a lot of businesses, for whatever reason, whether they want to make their goods less expensive in terms of competition, either fail to charge the VAT or charge and not pay. So you find out that when the burden comes from the authorities, they attack these businesses. Not that attack, they hold them responsible because they are supposed to actually, charge. And if they are failure to charge, they are going to be held responsible. And we've seen that a number of businesses go to stress, or they even end up collapsing because of their failure to actually execute their mandate of charging the VAT and collecting. And I think that is more education that we need to have for businesses, because it is one of the key areas of exposure for businesses as they become non-sustainable, when they fail to actually execute their, or to pay or to do what they are expected of them. So I think that is the key thing that we have, because in all discussions, in all platforms that I've been on, the revenue authorities, the GRA, the leadership has actually explained that when they piloted the EVAT, sometimes the VAT collection sometimes doubled, because now those who are collecting the VAT, that's the businesses, are now they know that they have nowhere to go. So they're actually reporting. And there has been evidence from most of these discussions from the leadership of the GRA that VAT revenues have actually doubled, or sometimes actually increased significantly. So I think when we are having these discussions, let's have clarity and explain the rationale for some of these things, because it's painful that Winston, you and I will pay a VAT to someone and the person not remit it and then use it. I think that is some of the things that we need to look at.
Well, Michael, thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. Michael is a tax partner, Michael Boating, tax partner, KPMG. We're glad you make time to join us. But before we go, John Awuni, in a sentence, how would you describe the Nkunim budget? Do you see any Nkunim in it?
Absolutely not. There's nothing Nkunim over there. I said that, well, tomorrow, by 1st January, the price of kinky will still be the same or higher. The price of rice, water will still be same or higher. The exchange may even be worse. So there is nothing victorious about this.
John Awuni, thank you very much for joining us this evening. John Awuni is the chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana. My name is Winston. I'm on behalf of the team. Thank you very much for joining us on Upfront on the Joy News channel. Do have a lovely evening and make time to join us tomorrow on the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. We'll continue the conversation there. Coming up is Joy News Prime. Have a lovely evening.